Hello. Thank you so much for joining us for the final conversation in our spring 2025 series, The First 100 Days from Home to Abroad. If it's your first time joining us, welcome. If you've been with us before, welcome back. We are glad you're here. This conversation is possible because we're here together, creating a modern agora, if you will. I'm Mary Bruce, the Assistant Director of Public Programs here at SNF Agora Institute at the Johns Hopkins University. We are an academic and public forum dedicated to improving and expanding civic engagement and informed, inclusive dialogue as the cornerstones of global democracy. We're delighted to be presenting the series with Hopkins at Home, the Alumni in Government, Academia, Law, and Policy community, the SNF Paideia program at the University of Pennsylvania, and the SNF Ithaca initiative at the University of Delaware. As with all programs we host, we seek to use our time together to create a space to exchange ideas, gain insights, learn frameworks for meaningful civic and community participation. To that end, we of course invite you to share comments and questions in the chat throughout the talk, and that includes students and staff and faculty joining from our campus here in Baltimore. Today's discussion is called Beyond the First 100 Days, How Civic Engagement Can Build a New Resilience in American Democracy. Over the next hour, we'll discuss how institutions like universities and civic groups can serve as anchors of democratic resilience and renewal and strengthen democracy beyond electoral cycles. And to take a bit of moderator's privilege, I also want to say that this topic is in particular close to my heart. I got my start in high school as an AmeriCorps member, serving in Washington, D.C. public schools. And after college, I had the opportunity to serve in the U.S. Peace Corps in Morocco. I actually later went on, it's been a big part of my career, working both at Peace Corps, the agency, and as head of the AmeriCorps Alumni Association. So I've been involved in these conversations at the local and national federal level for a long time. So I think we're in for a real treat today. So in keeping with the mission of SNF Agora, we strive to bring together multiple and diverse perspectives. So I'm thrilled to introduce our speakers and guests today. First, we have former Maryland Congressman John Sarbanes, who joined the SNF Agora Institute here as our first Distinguished Practitioner in residence. He brings a long and remarkable record of public service, including 7 years as chair of the Democracy Reform Task Force in the House of Representatives. He brings a wealth of experience from his tenure in Congress, where he was a champion for democratic reforms to strengthen the voices of Americans across the political spectrum. As chief architect of H.R. 1, the For the People Act, and later the Freedom to Vote Act, he sought to enhance access to the ballot box and limiting influence of money in politics. And though he's left Congress, his passion for these initiatives has not slowed down. We're so grateful that he joined our team here. We have Jasmine Blanks Jones, Executive Director of Johns Hopkins Center for Social Concern, which focuses on student development through civic and community engagement. Also known as the CSC, the Center for Social Concern collaborates with Baltimore city organizations, Hopkins faculty, and campus partners to curate community-based programming that helps equip students to be engaged and responsible members of the community. They're also one of our closest partners here at SNF Agora. Dr. Blanks Jones is an accomplished nonprofit leader, award-winning educator and scholar holding a PhD in education and Africana studies from the University of Pennsylvania. And last but certainly not least is Madeline Yates, founder and executive director of Transform Mid-Atlantic, the region's largest higher education civic engagement association, which serves institutions across Maryland, D.C., Virginia, and Eastern West Virginia. And under her leadership, the organization brings together presidents of public and private colleges to promote global citizenship and build just communities through civic and community engagement. Again, a lifetime of experience here in cross-cultural education and service learning. You'll see lots of theme words in these speakers around civic engagement and community engagement, so we have the right group together tonight. One final note before we begin, the views expressed by these speakers are those of the individuals and do not necessarily reflect those of the university or event sponsors. Johns Hopkins is also committed to the steadfast protection of free expression, which emerges from the university's time-honored role in the creation of knowledge and the exploration of ideas. And we're dropping a link in the chat here, expression.jhu.edu, which shares more information about that. So to start our conversation, I'd love to start with you, John. This session was your vision. I had pitched the idea of a series on the first 100 days, and you said, well, what about the 101st day? What happens after that? And what happens beyond these political milestones? So you wisely challenged our thinking, and I'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear from you. Why was that frame of beyond the first 100 days important to you, and how are you thinking about how civic institutions, like some we'll be hearing from today, strengthen democracy beyond these political milestones?
So thanks very much, Mary. And thank you for getting us started with the inspiration of your time with AmeriCorps and the Peace Corps, obviously civic and community engagement initiatives that have been around for a long time and made a huge difference to our country and frankly made a difference to the world. I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted to be with the SNF Agora Institute at this moment, and I'm looking forward to partnering today with Jasmine and Madeline on a really good conversation. And to the Hopkins at Home people, it's great to be part of this forum today. Yeah, the reason I thought it made sense to look past the 100 days is in part being ornery a little bit, which is that there's so much attention that comes to the first 100 days. It kind of gobbles up everybody's I don't know, their bandwidth, whether they're observers, whether they're practitioners, and so forth. And that's fair because a lot can happen in the first 100 days of any new administration. Certainly, we're seeing that now, and everyone's got their own perspective on what that agenda looks like. And I'm sure we'll get to that over the course of this discussion today. But that 100 days tends to be put very much in kind of a political contest lens. That's inevitable when you have a new administration coming in, particularly a change from one party to the next. You're going to have that dynamic at work. I found myself and find myself as interested, frankly, if not more interested, in what's going on every day that, in a sense, is running alongside what gets all this attention coming out of Washington. And that is people on the ground making a difference with civic engagement, with community engagement. They've been doing it from day one. They've been doing it through day 100, and they're going to be doing it for the next 1,000 days and beyond. And I very much feel that that is the connective tissue that creates resilience in our democracy. And actually, it can be a source of generating a new kind of resilience for American democracy. So bringing attention to that is just important, and having conversations about how people can connect to it. I will say that when I was in Congress for 18 years, I occupied two spaces simultaneously. One was the political space. You're a candidate every 2 years. You're an elected person, so you've got your name on the ballot. You're a member of a party. So every day when I would go into work, that was one space I occupied, and that can be pretty intense. It can be a contest. You can be in a battle mode from one moment to the next. And frankly, right now we see one party pushing an agenda, another party figuring out sort of what the response to that should be. That's all part of American democracy. But the other space that I occupied, and to be honest, in moments that seemed like a storm, I kind of took refuge in this, was the space of being a legislator, a lawmaker, and in particular, responding to my constituents in the community. And I was blessed because every day people would come into my office, community groups, nonprofits, individuals who were trying to make a difference out there on the ground. And what was amazing about that is they weren't typically coming in siding with one party or the other. They were coming in and saying, this is what people need out there in the community. It was often organized in a bipartisan way. And it was super motivating to me in terms of the legislative work that I did. And so as we are marking this first 100 days, leaning back into what that looks like, civic engagement and community engagement, and what it means for our country and our democracy, I think makes a lot of sense. So that was the motivation behind it. And the last thing I'll say before we move on is I was always very struck by the fact that Veterans Day, which is November 11th each year, always comes right after, almost immediately after Election Day. And I always showed up at these Veterans Days events looking for this opportunity to transition out of the intensity of a contest and a battle in the political space and get back to celebrating contributions, patriotic contributions to our country that make a difference in communities every single day. And so that stark contrast was always something that impressed me, but I leaned towards that Veterans Day celebration after an election as a way to kind of refortify my commitment to community, to civic engagement, and to all that connective tissue that people create every single day out there in our country. So I'm excited about the conversation. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much for those remarks and your service and your ongoing service, and the reminder to me of the connection between different types of service branches. I'm from a military family, and when I finished high school and needed to figure out what was next, I considered the military, like a lot of families who don't have the money for college, and found AmeriCorps instead. And when it was still a new program. So really thinking about the ethos of how service is a part of culture and cultures, and what that looks like today. So I know our next panelist, Dr. Blanks Jones, has a lot of experience and a lot to share about this. So turning to you as executive director of our Center for Social Concern, could you first, for the audience, share what is the Center for Social Concern for folks who might not know, who are learning today, and share about the role of universities and university students and the institution that you steward to help strengthen community and civic engagement on and off campus, and in particular during times like these, during times of presidential transitions in the White House. How does that affect what we're thinking about here?
Thank you. It's really great to be here with all of you. It's important that we take this time to have these kinds of discussions. On, 100th day, we've had 100 days of rapid change requiring rapid response. Today is also May Day, which is known to many as an International Workers' Day, where we reflect and take collective action. There are demonstrations happening all over the world today. We had 100 days of experiencing the response of the international community to the swift changes in policy and diplomacy that are taking place here in the US. If we've ever been called upon to recognize the connections between the local and the global, the time is now. So for this discussion, the title alone, the things that stand out to me aren't just the 100 days, but like John said, the beyond, this thought of beyond, this concept of beyond. So prior to stepping into my current role as the executive director of the Center for Social Concern, which is an office at Hopkins in the Division of Student Affairs, where we work with our students to help them become active citizens within Baltimore and within whatever communities that they live now or where they may once they graduate. But before I was in this role, I was on the academic side of the house, as I like to describe it. As a scholar, it's crucial that free speech is supported because academic freedom depends on our ability to critically present arguments that move the field forward. I was also a nonprofit leader, working with youth advocates on a number of issues that impact their communities. In both spaces, I've been engaged in many important discussions about the necessity of not only navigating systems that in many ways are designed to oppress people, but indeed to dismantle those very systems. And so interestingly, in this role now with the Center for Social Concern, I have the privilege of bringing research to practice. And I recognize that we are indeed in a moment of rapid dismantling of these systems, even if it's not in the way that many scholars and community activists and advocates imagined it might be. The conversation at this moment is actually about the beyond. So what comes after it's all torn down? Similarly to discussions which occurred around the COVID pandemic, was normal ever good? Was it right? Was it just, and for whom? Do we want a new normal, or do we want something entirely different? So the discussion that I'm interested in most is how we craft our shared vision of beyond, because that is what is at the heart of civic and community engagement, how we develop that shared project of what it means to be part of this society. And what do we hope to build with each of our students through their engagement in Baltimore? So in this particular role and in our work at the Center for Social Concern, we have three key items that we look at as components of our approach. Those are education, action, and reflection. Through the education lens, we are giving trainings for our students. We have a lot of sessions that are built to develop them before they go out and do really important work in the community. It's a know before you go model. So in any issue that you want to pursue, there are experts already working hard on those things. It's important that you find out what's going on and how you can best come alongside of those who have been doing the work for quite a while. I realize I'm talking in this space to many alumni, and many of you may yourselves be the experts on certain topics. We need you. But for you, I would also say that a deeper form of education in civic and community engagement is recognizing the folks with lived experience, because they provide an expertise that is absolutely essential in moving the needle. They often have the solutions to the problems that they've identified because their very lives and well-being are impacted daily. And these are the people that we need to be supporting and learning from. Our second component of our approach is action. And right now, all of the actions are necessary, from philanthropy to direct service and volunteerism, collective action, voting. Midterms are on the way. Now is not the time to rest from these things. Protests and demonstrations, economic development, rights-focused advocacy and community organizing, constructive and deliberative dialogue. How often do we take the time to think about how we may actually, in our own lives, be adding to political polarization because we've not been thoughtful and intentional about how we're engaging in dialogue with our neighbors, with our colleagues? And then finally, that leads me to reflection. In the current moment, it's really important to think about who you are in this work, what your values are, how they align with the values of the communities that you are in or that you wish to be in, and potentially to dig in. If you are already active, do more. If you are giving to organizations you care about, it's the time to give more. If you are volunteering for an hour a week, do it for 2 hours a week. And if you're just joining in to this work of civic and community engagement, you are needed. So I would just say be present. And for me, being present is about not just doing the work, but also enjoying doing the work and celebrating the moments where we're really able to do things that make a difference in the everyday for the people that we live, work, and play with. So that is what we do at the Center for Social Concern, and that is what I'm hoping can go with us as we think about the beyond this 100 days.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I am thinking of the Grinch movie where his heart grows 3 sizes. Democracy can be hard work, and civic engagement and community engagement can be hard work, showing up again and again, especially if you're in any challenging times and stepping sometimes out of your comfort zone. And what you said just reminded me and heartened me of how nourishing it can be also, that if your tank is low, that it is through relationships, it is through community, that there's hard work is good work, and there's a lot of joy in that. And here at an academic institution, being invited to have framing questions to think about the work. I came from, nonprofit institutions, political institutions, where that's not always the case. So here you're bridging, and John Sarbanes bridging the policy and practice, and the opportunity to ask yourself meaningful questions, and the invitations to the audience. So thank you for that. I'd love now to turn it to Madeline Yates. And I shared I got my start at AmeriCorps, and it was actually with the Mid-Atlantic Network of Youth and Family Services. So I'm excited to have an institution, a partner like you, who partners here with Hopkins and Baltimore, but also has this broader lens. Could you share a little bit more about your work, your partnership with Hopkins, how higher ed is playing into your world right now, and just what you're seeing and what we should know?
Sure. Thank you, Mary. I really appreciate, and the Grinch comment fits, because really what this is about is in a yin yang way, blending heart and mind, because developing the mind alone is actually not the goal, right? It's developing compassion. It's developing empathy. It's developing the capacity to care, the understandings through which we act. All action springs forth from our core understanding. So what is the role of higher ed? What is its core mission? How are we fulfilling that core mission in terms of developing our students' capacity to realize their ability to engage in their communities, to practice, to be on that pathway of engagement, so that every single student who is a graduate of our institutions, or even those who pass through and may not graduate, that they will come out vibrating with care for their community, that they will come out knowing how to plug in, whoever they are, wherever they are, and whatever passion area speaks to them the most. No side owns service, but higher ed has a profound responsibility, and it's part of their tax exempt status, and it's part of what higher ed is currently taking a lot of heat. You know, what is the relevance of higher ed? Well, it goes back to President Daniels wrote in the book, What Universities Owe Democracy. Universities are a place of such influence that they will, either through action or inaction, shape society around them. And it would be a scandal for them to sit passively by as the political structures aligned with their mission degrade around them. From John Dewey saying democracy has to be born anew every generation and education is its midwife, to other philosophers who write extensively about the role of education in higher ed in particular. Education does not transform the world. Education transforms people, and people transform the world. That's Paulo Freire. This is replicated throughout the years, from the land grant movement to the historically Black colleges and universities whose role was to serve their communities. Same with community colleges and their multiple pivotal seminal articles and calls to action through the years, including the Crucible Moment with AAC&U in 2012 and Askew's 2002 Stepping Forward as Stewards of Place. So Transform Mid-Atlantic, to your question, Mary, is part of this movement. We are unique in being the only Mid-Atlantic place-based higher ed association that serves this region in this way, in this niche in higher ed. But we're connected with this long thread of other people, this river of people doing work to engage campuses and communities, literally to fulfill that part of higher ed's mission. So we're 17 years old. We are the largest in terms of the number of campuses with which we have the pleasure and privilege of working. We have about 33. We have publics, privates, 2-year, 4-year, historically Black, minority serving, faith-based. We even have a seminary. We have urban, rural, large and small. And we bring them together, but not just to give them benefits. We bring them together to have a conversation about collective action, to how can higher ed put its shoulder to the wheel to help to improve community life in the region? How is it doing it, and how can we do it better? And I don't consider that Transform Mid-Atlantic is the expert. We are just the cross-pollinators. We bring many experts together, people like Jasmine and her colleagues and peers in the field, to simply share and to strengthen each other through that cross-pollination. So when you look at pivotal historical movements from students have played a role in getting, when I was a student in the 1980s, we had a voice about higher ed divesting from apartheid South Africa. Now, these are big things, but there's a whole pathway, there's a whole trajectory of engagement. Maryland is unique in all 50 states and actually having a high school graduation requirement of service learning. And there's an opportunity in Maryland for this pathway of civic engagement, and other, I mean, DC, Philadelphia, other places around the country have this expectation as well. But there's an opportunity to really make it transformative. Mary, if you had these early experiences, it becomes infecting in a really positive way. And it gets in our DNA and in our blood. We can't not do this work. And the opportunity here, we are also, ironically, the smallest in terms of staff and our finances. So if there are people listening in who are on boards, which obviously many of you are, is there an opportunity to help us partner with that foundation or with that other institution that may not yet be in our membership, or with your corporations? We're starting a corporate advisory board because this work does require an infrastructure. This work does require the professional development of people. I mean, Jasmine's at the top of her field, but the whole idea is not just to throw people out into the community, but to listen to the community, to do the preparation, to do the asset mapping, to respect community voice. And that requires a little bit of preparation and reflection. And to do that work and to bring together our presidents, our chief academic officers, our student affairs professionals, to do this infrastructural work well, there are costs. There are also opportunities. So if there are ways that some of the people on this call might be interested in funding some dialogue work, that would be brilliant. I mean, we can all start where we are. We can't start where we're not. So that's just the tip of the iceberg.
I'm so grateful for your work and lifting up and building on what the previous speaker said around learning alongside, partnering with, and how I think you said that, no party has a monopoly on service. And I've worked for efforts out of Republican and Democratic administrations to advance service. And that in some ways, there are known solutions. We have great research on what types of community interventions and community partnerships are effective. And in many ways, as Jasmine lifted up, there's been so much change in the last 100 days, and we'll get to this more in the conversation, that the civic communities are having to learn how to adapt, as always. Yesterday is never tomorrow, no matter where we are. And so learning how to be adaptive is part of the work, and that it's folks, all of the folks on this call and those joining in remotely, and all those joining in remotely, your friends and family, who are part of the solution. I'd love to ask one more question of the panelists, and then we'll turn to the audience for questions as well. John, you joined SNF Agora as our first Distinguished Practitioner in residence to help bridge academia to policy and practice. So, and to help us strategize about how to best meet our mission here at SNF Agora to build healthy global democracies at home and abroad. So could you offer some reflections on what you heard from Jasmine and Madeline, and how their work specifically, and work like theirs of community leaders, relates to the work of members of Congress, and more broadly, our shared work of building vibrant, healthy democratic systems? Easy question with 19 parts.
Sure, and I'll try and answer in 2 minutes. So first of all, how glad am I that I showed up to hear from Jasmine and Madeline today, because that was super motivating. It's got my juices flowing in terms of how they described it. And there were a couple things each of them said that stuck with me. One was Madeline's observation that when you are reaching into community for partnership, you have to come with humility, you have to come with respect, you got to be ready to listen. And universities certainly as partners have to abide by that sort of prescription as much as anybody else does if those partnerships are going to be robust and meaningful. I think the observation about what the Agora Institute, the SNF Agora Institute, is trying to achieve, which is to marry up or link good, solid research and learning with practice out there in the real world, just to use that phrase, or connecting to the lived experience of people in the communities around you, as Jasmine said. That's the right goal and mission to have. It can be a difficult one to find that right balance and mix, but I think it's very much what SNF Agora is seeking to do, and frankly, calls like this with this kind of participation is a reflection of that effort. I did want to just put a punctuation mark or double click on, as some people will say, Jasmine using the phrase "know before you go," because as she described, the way the center operates, that you've got to kind of get educated on what's happening out there in the community, how the community is being affected by things, before you get out there and start doing things. Because it lifts up this notion on the knowing side that, that universities can offer through education and learning and scholarship and research, and that's undeniably critical to successful partnerships. But it also makes the point that knowing isn't enough. You got to go, you got to get out there, you got to do stuff with that knowledge. You got to make it real and practical in the moment, because there's no moment to lose here. And particularly now under the current circumstances. So translating your knowledge into action and getting to the go part of it, but decently equipped with knowledge that can help you make an impact, is really important right now. And obviously the center is doing that every day. Transform Mid-Atlantic is doing that in partnership and networked in really an amazing fashion. So all of that gives me a lot of hope about where we're headed, what's going to happen past the first 100 days, into the next 1,000 and the next 10,000, as we continue to try to make our country strong and all that it can be. And as far as members of Congress, who do they respect the most? They respect change makers out there who don't just know, but go, who are on the ground. When people came into my office and they were action oriented, but had done their homework, they were the people that I paid the most attention to, and their ideas were the ones that found it into good, solid legislation that can impact people's lives in a positive way.
Yes, I just wanted to bump that obviously, as probably everyone realizes, AmeriCorps has recently taken a very substantial hit. And many of our AmeriCorps members all across the country have been sent home, and CCC members, AmeriCorps Vista members, and reaching out to your legislators, to your representatives and your congresspeople, this is what is needed right now. I mean, obviously my colleagues can put some links in the chat. That's a huge issue in our field, because frankly, I want to give full credit to Johns Hopkins for its role in helping us found the very first information session to begin the process of founding our higher education association dedicated to the public purposes of higher ed was held by Johns Hopkins. And even prior to that, some Johns Hopkins students, together with students at the Naval Academy, were calling for and organizing around getting engaged in the community. So our students need this, but they also need those who have passed on and are positioned to reach out to their legislators to do so. And legislators really want to hear from you. And we'll put the links in so that you can reach out to us or reach out directly through Voices for National Service and many other venues.
Madeline, I don't want to take for granted that everyone knows what AmeriCorps Vistas are doing. I know that through Transform Mid-Atlantic, you have over 30, I think, Vista places.
Yes.
What are some of the projects they're working on? Like, what is the urgency? What's at stake?
Right. Oh, so what is at stake? Thank you. So AmeriCorps Vista was founded back in the 60s. It was the domestic version, anti-poverty focused, of the Peace Corps. And our organization has received a federal grant for the past 17 years. More roughly, each of our member institutions receives a full-time program coordinator. So a Johns Hopkins student, when they graduate, could then serve as a full-time AmeriCorps Vista member, helping. I think that our projects at Johns Hopkins were forming a campus kitchen or a food security program. Another one was around a community garden. Another was working with one of your local K-12 schools. We have projects on financial literacy, on working with the Goucher Prison Education Program was one of the AmeriCorps Vista projects that we founded a long time ago. We have a lot of education-focused projects, a lot of food security and anti-poverty focused projects, veterans projects as well. This work is at risk. The people are being sent home. And these are people who have signed up, like Mary did when she was younger, to do a year of national service. And they're literally being cut off at the knees. Sorry, to me, dollar for dollar and hour for hour, there could not possibly be a better use of tax dollars, right? Because you're creating this pathway. Young people are literally receiving only a living allowance or a stipend for their year of service. And this benefits communities. It makes communities stronger. It is helping people move out of poverty so that they are not needing many social services. So that's what is at risk. Yeah.
Real quick for both Jasmine and Madeline, we've been leaning a lot or focusing a lot on this idea of universities and students and kind of what, armed with the right knowledge and learning they can bring into the community to benefit the community. But I'd love to get the lens on how it comes back from the community to the university as a benefit, because the fact of the matter is that when students engage in service learning, as Madeline was describing, or get out there to do the projects as Jasmine was presenting along the way, there's also learning in that, which is shaping them for the long term. And hopefully, if designed well, that knowledge that they're getting from the experience of participating in the community is finding its way back into the university space. So I'd be curious just to hear about it from that side of the equation.
I will gladly jump in here. So, John, we've had a really great time together talking through the nature of this work being mutually beneficial. And that's really crucial. If students are primarily only going out to do direct service, working in a food kitchen, doing a community garden, their understanding of the city, in our case, that they're living in, is that the city has needs and they can help fill those needs, rather than also understanding that the city has assets and there are things that they benefit from and can learn by engaging on a deeper level in the city. So we offer community-based learning courses where students are spending a full semester working on any particular issue. Just this morning, I had the honor of sitting in the Student Affairs Aspirations Awards ceremony, where we had one of our students who was taking a course on Black birthing from Dr. Lisa Wright, and the student has learned from the community co-educator of that course, a community member who helps people become doulas and lactation consultants, that she herself wants to be a doula, that she understands how now in a different way that medical systems can actually learn from local knowledge and community forms of health, things that are easily overlooked. I've had student after student tell me that they came to Hopkins with the mindset that Western medicine was the right scientific way of doing things. And they maybe in some ways even turn their backs on their own communities in terms of the local knowledge or the indigenous knowledge in the case of our students who might be from different parts of the world. And they're like, but they come here, and by encountering these amazing community organizations that have developed work that doesn't even rely on, I'll say, the terminology of best practices, but through lived experience have seen positive outcomes time after time, year after year, that is the really important learning that is occurring for our students through the community-based learning courses. But we also have our tutorial project, and I would not be surprised if there are alumni on this call right now who are part of that. Tutorial project has existed since the 50s. Since the 50s here at Johns Hopkins, and we serve 120 first through fifth graders every single year, and they get tutorial services twice a week by the same tutor, someone who gets to know them and their families and their learning needs. A huge benefit for the 2T, for the young child, a humongous benefit for the 18, 19, 20-year-old who left home, and younger siblings and younger cousins and moms and dads and aunts and uncles and grandparents to feel somewhat isolated in their beginning days here at an institution that is quite large and in a city that's very busy. But to feel a sense of belonging, connection in the community is really transformative for those students. So the benefit happens on an intellectual and academic level. It happens on a personal and confidence building level. It's truly a tremendous impact in multiple directions for our students to be engaged in community-based work.
Jasmine, you could not possibly have said all of that better. But I'll also chime in about mental health. We know the benefit to the participants of service learning, civic and community engagement, that they are experiencing community. They feel connected. For a lot of first generation students, it is widely known and research proven that service learning and civic and community engagement, applying their learning, it's helping with workforce development, it's helping with their retention and their completion. This is crucial to create opportunities. I don't use the word teach all that often. I think of it as creating learning opportunities for them, but they're shepherded. We know from the research that if you just throw people out there without that guided preparation and reflection, we can be doing harm both to the individual and to the community. So there are so many benefits. The 5 high impact practices, service learning is really the sum of all of them. It has been expressed that way, that when it is done well and right, it literally is transformative for the individual and for the community, and we need to fund it. We need to, we're the paradigm, we're the people in the roles right now. So we need to get our presidents to sign on to this. We need to get our academic leaders to respect it. And we offer institutes around incorporating civic and community engaged teaching in the research and the scholarship, in the promotion and tenure process. We do that infrastructural piece that helps it stick and stay, that helps it become part of the DNA of the institutions. But it needs to be done thoughtfully and respectfully, with reciprocity with the community at its core.
One of the reasons I'm drawn to this conversation, was drawn to this role I started a few months ago, is how thoughtful I see Johns Hopkins as an institution bridging the curricular, extracurricular, co-curricular. And at SNF Agora and the university, we have a minor in civic life. So for alumni, that might be, it's a newer program and a growing program, and exciting to see the different ways the university helps build infrastructure for students to build this understanding. And we all need to continue to build this understanding. I do see some questions coming in in the chat from the audience, and do want to invite folks to add in questions from the speakers. There's a common theme in all of the events we've held and tonight about what we can do. And in particular, there's a specific question I think Madeline and John, you'd be best equipped to answer. Maybe you're all best equipped to answer, around reaching out to representatives and how how is it useful to send concerns? There's a question from the audience. Is it useful to send concerns to members of legislators who are aligned with your ideas? Is that helpful, or should outreach and energy be spent elsewhere? And then there's also questions about, Madeline and John, could you respond to that? And then there's other questions that I'll get to in a second.
It's always good to reach out to your legislators, whether you're calling them to urge them to do something that they're not inclined to do, or whether you're calling them to basically say thank you for, leaning in on an important issue, because that helps them to feel reinforced. Frankly, if you can share a story with them when you do that, you equip them to go out and tell that story to others. I mean, some of the most compelling testimony that members of Congress trade with each other, and then project outwards in their communication are stories that came to them from people in their districts. It's basically a human interest story that you can grab onto, but it can dramatize what the policy opportunity or threat is in any given moment. So I think that's super, super important. The other thing is, when you call, I think the most effective advocacy in these calls, again, regardless of which side you're trying to push from, on your legislator, either do this that you're not doing, or keep doing what you're already engaged in. It's really important to just talk about it in terms of human impact. Like, this is what's happening in the community. This isn't about Republicans, Democrats, independents. It's not about politics. It's about impact on the community. And sharing it in that way, I think, gives members of Congress the most effective tools they need to then go enter that kind of legislative and advocacy space in an effective way.
Yes, I mean, that's simply widely known. Legislators need to hear from their constituents, and whether it's encouragement to continue on, or a specific ask, that's what they need to hear, and they really want to hear. So this Friday, actually tomorrow, we're taking our Transform Mid-Atlantic Civic Fellows, our group of students, each one appointed by the president of their campus, to Capitol Hill, and we're meeting with Senator Van Hollen's office. Now, he's obviously strongly supportive already, and already the governor of Maryland has signed on, and the attorneys general of 24 states have already signed on to a request to refund and restore AmeriCorps funding. But they need to hear from more and more and more people. They need to hear stories of impact. That's true.
There's a follow-up question in the chat from Dan, and I'll refer this to John. Is writing letters or emails most effective? What's the most useful way to reach out with so many communications?
I mean, writing letters and emails is important, I think, to register the volume of concern. So if you can add to a lot of emails and letters that are coming in, I think phone calls are the most effective, because it gives you the opportunity to speak to another human being, and it gives you maybe a little more time to expound on the human impact side of the story that you're trying to tell. And I've also seen, I mentioned this, we did something at Hopkins the other day on this topic of how to reach out to your member of Congress. I've also seen situations where
dial in for democracy.
Yeah, dial in for democracy. That's what it was. And I've seen a lot of times where a constituent calls in, they tell a very powerful story. The person on the other side of the line says, would you maybe be interested in coming and, testifying in Congress, or joining us at a forum to share your story? And so people that are obscure, but they're like the real people that matter out there, tell that story, and then they get pulled into a space where their voice can be elevated and really make a powerful difference. So I think that can be one of the most effective ways to reach out to members.
And to build on that, and I'd love to turn this question to Jasmine, there's questions in the chat about how do we get, so we have, you made a call to action earlier about if you're volunteering, volunteer a little bit more. If you're donating, can you donate a little bit more? How do we bring folks into the conversation, into the work, who might not already be in the conversation? The question was specifically about voting, and we'll drop some resources in the chat from our Hopkins Votes initiative. But could you speak to how do you bring people into these conversations and work, maybe starting with students? I think we have sort of our usual suspects who show up on campus ready to go, but how are you broadening that outreach for students, and then for folks at home, what can they do?
Oh, for sure. So with students, another a newer initiative that we've taken on is called Hop Talks, and these are dialogue sessions that in a theory of change, spur action, but a chance for people to really talk about the pain points, to talk about the things that feel polarizing, the things that are being leveraged to make us feel more different perhaps than we are, or I'd say not even leveraged, but in some cases even weaponized to cause further divisions. So our Hop Talk series has covered a range of issues where we bring students together in a really relaxed setting over food. Breaking bread together is a good way to just get a good conversation going, and really just to also create a situation where we get past the whole don't talk about politics over dinner thing. We actually kind of have to talk about the politics that impact our everyday and the way that we're able to live and live with each other. So we are working in those spaces to encourage students to recognize that even though you're here to learn a particular academic topic, that you have a life to live, and you live that life with and among others. So if for those at home listening or at work on your lunch break listening, if you're interested in being a potential invited speaker for Hop Talks, reach out to us, volunteer@jhu.edu, or if you just have an idea for something that you think could help further dialogue on our campus, especially as an alum, like what would you have liked to have been encouraged to talk about with your peers? We would love to hear from you. Other ways that I would encourage alumni to think about getting involved, I named it before, is through philanthropy. Our largest program in terms of like direct engagement in Baltimore is CIIP, the Community Impact Internships Program. Next year will be 15 years of this program where we have placed 50 undergraduate students at 50 different public and nonprofit organizations all across the city. These are full-time internship positions, and the organizations do not have to pay for these interns. If you want to help us see another 15 years, please reach out to Development and Alumni Relations at Hopkins. Rachel Hitchcock is a fantastic partner for us in that office. She's the person who can help you make sure that we can see another 15 years of that kind of engagement in the city. And it is, like I said earlier, that direct learning from, learning with, and coming alongside of amazing organizations, amazing community partners that helps us to develop those lasting reciprocal relationships. Some of our partners have been with us in that program for more than a decade. And those are the relationships that move us from the possibility of becoming extractive, as often can happen when research institutions in particular are engaged in a range of work in the city without having done the homework, the getting to know and the understanding the values of the people who are living the lives.
Thank you for sharing those specific calls to action, and we'll try and find those links and drop them in the chat as well. And we are unbelievably coming up on time here. I'd love to ask the same question to Madeline and then John. Are there other calls to action? How can we bring more folks in? How can we help?
Absolutely. And there's also another question in the chat about how can we avoid just the drop in and drop out in the community and the potential harm that can create. One of the questions is, how do we avoid just creating another short-term university initiative that disappears when the semester ends? And again, this is exactly the work of Transform Mid-Atlantic. We can hold an institute for engaged departments once it becomes part of the course, not just at the whim of the instructor who might have the initiative to get it going, but how can it be baked into the course and then into the department? How can it be really an expression of an ongoing committed partnership. One example many years ago was with McDaniel College's relationship with its neighboring Boys and Girls Club. And through our AmeriCorps Vista project, they figured out that the real need of the community partner was during the breaks when there were not students. So it was during January, during the summer. What did they do? They created course credit so that students could actually serve during those times, get a little bit of course credit. And there are many other elements, but this is the type of thoughtful engagement that can be implemented and supported. And it can't be if colleges and universities don't have high levels of institutional autonomy, shared governance, academic freedom, and student engagement. It doesn't work without that. So in terms of a call to action, there's the immediate with AmeriCorps in our field and many other things as well. Our presidents are on the Hill. Our board is all presidents, but there's ongoing work as well. We created a rubric a number of years ago that institutions can use to look at themselves as institutions and see where they are on this trajectory and where they can move. And holding these institutes again is an opportunity, and we need corporate partners in the room. We need more and more institutional partners in the room because we are stronger together. We simply need to cross-pollinate and learn from each other. So please reach out to us and let us know that you're interested. Many people are drawn to the direct service, the collect the can or the collect the sweater. We're this more or less invisible infrastructure that brings quality and depth and sustainability to this work. So if that speaks to you, we would truly love to hear from you.
So Mary, in 1 minute, I'm not sure I can top either of those two calls to action, but what I would say is look inside your own orbit of influence, your own peer group, and figure out how to motivate the people that are connected to you. Double down on whatever they are doing and you can do with them that represents that leaning into the community in a way that is supportive. And if we all do that kind of inventory, we actually rediscover that we're connected to a lot of things that can benefit from that kind of support in this moment. I'd remind people that next year is a year of many anniversaries. It's the 150th anniversary of Hopkins. And I would encourage alumni to maybe look at that anniversary through the lens of these amazing opportunities for civic and community engagement that we've heard about today, that Hopkins really has at the core of its mission, and ways you can bolster that next year and kind of put it at the top of the list of things that you're so impressed with. So we get, in the way Jasmine talked about the next 15 years for an internship program, you know, service, connection to the community and so forth, that can be the engine that ensures the next 150 years for Hopkins as a vital institution. And then it's the 250th anniversary of our country. And so find all the ways inside your communities to mark that moment in a way that represents your aspiration for what America is, what it stands for, what its values should be. That can be a very exciting thing, and it can be a very fortifying and resilient thing to do in these moments where we're feeling a lot of pressure coming at us. So that's another call to action.
To give huge gratitude to our speakers today and to the community members at home and folks who will be watching this later on YouTube. These conversations are possible because we're here together. I'll offer as well in the chat, we'll drop a link to a quick 1-minute survey where you can give your specific ideas for upcoming events. We're actively building, this is the last in this particular series. But we are actively building our next series. So please share your ideas for what you'd like to hear from next. We also, in just under 2 weeks, we're hosting an event here on the Hopkins Baltimore campus. We have live debates twice a year, open to the public. I'm sorry, twice a semester, open to the public. One in DC, one in Baltimore. And in Baltimore, we're having a live debate with incredible speakers on can the US outpace China in AI? It's a topic I don't know a lot about, but I'm excited to learn a lot about because I know it matters. And also a great way to come together at Shriver Hall in community and get to meet other folks who are asking similar questions. And my moderator's privilege is that I think, Jasmine, what you said about food and community really matters. And I have a group of friends who they're doing a like democracy brunch on Sundays, just inviting different friends to say like, hey, let's get together and talk about this. And the kids go out back and play. And for my birthday, I have a good friend who cares about this stuff as well. And we often invite our friends into service on our birthdays. So just use it, it's fun, it's joyful, like, hey, we're gonna go do this thing. I think community matters. Do you want to come with me? And that's our work here at SNF Agora. We create spaces, co-create spaces virtually like this. And here on the Hopkins campus, we're opening a beautiful new building and are excited to see all of you in person and virtually again. So again, huge gratitude. It's been a wonderful discussion. My heart is full and I feel more fueled up to continue the good work in partnership and humility with the communities here today. So thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your day.